Well, we're long time homeschoolers, and our daughter now is 14 and in college.
She's homeschooled all
Wait,
her
14
life.
and in college?
Yes.
We got to hear more about that.
Some of the amazing things she's done is she did middle school, which is comprises of 3 years worth of information and whatnot. We did it she did it actually in 7 and 8 months, the whole middle school.
Wow.
Knowledge and skill sets and everything. And basically at 14, she was ready for college. So she basically skipped high school and went straight to college. And in 4 years, she'll get a bachelor's degree in business. And by the time she graduates, she'll have not only her bachelor's, but would have met all her high school requirements.
Do your kids need school? Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our amazing friends over at AMP America, folks. You go on to the news channels, you go on to the articles you read, and if it's from corporate media entities, you're getting the corporate media bias and fluff, and frankly, you don't need that. It's just garbage in the brain. So what you need is AMP America for the news, the opinion pieces that are really without the fluff or that bias. Head over to ampamerica.com. I will personally thank you as well because, hey, maybe I have a few opinion pieces over there and more. Go ahead, check them out over at ampamerica.com. Also, the Brian Nichols Show is brought to you by our phenomenal studio sponsor, Cardio Miracle. Now, folks, I've been using Cardio Miracle for about a year, and I'm blown away at the impact that Cardio Miracle has had on my life. Now, I was skeptical back a year ago. I heard Cardio Miracle. We had John Hewlett, the CEO, here in the show. He's talking about nitric oxide. It's helping people have better blood pressure, lower heart rates, all that fun stuff. And I'm like, that sounds great, but I don't know. It just sounds like it's too good to be true. That was frankly the mentality I had. But I said, heck, there's a 100% money back guarantee. We'll give this thing a shot. 2 months. That's all it took. 2 months. My blood pressure went from being 140/90 consistently down to like 120/80. My resting heart rate dropped from like the low 70s down to the high 50s. I was floored, like better sleep, better pump at the gym. My heart feeling the best it's felt in literally years. So I said, okay, they're a studio sponsor and I need to tell my audience. And I've told you guys now for the past year, and you guys have reached out and you've told me what you've heard. And I'm just blown away. Literally hundreds of you guys in the audience are using Cardio Miracle. You're seeing the benefits for yourselves, and you're joining the tens of thousands of folks out there who are across the country, heck, across the world, experiencing the Cardio Miracle benefits. So if you want to go ahead, jump on the Cardio Miracle train, all you got to do is head down below into the show notes or video description. Click that link. It's going to bring you right over to cardiomiracle.com, and you should have a 15% discount applied to your order. But if it, for whatever reason, didn't, just make sure you use code TBNS at checkout and you'll have that discount applied. And like I said earlier, 100% money back guarantee. So you literally have nothing to lose. One more time, cardiomiracle.com, the best heart health supplement in the world. All right, let's talk about this question I teased at the intro. Do your kids actually need schooling? That's a great question. Now, if you are like 99% of Americans out there, you just have this knee-jerk reaction. Well, of course our kids need to go to school, but is it actually school that's supposed to teach them, or is school schooling them? Are your kids being educated, or are they just being force-fed information and ways of doing things that, frankly, they don't really need to learn anymore because it's from like 100+ years ago? Great question, right? Let's discuss all that and more. Joining me here on The Brian Nichols Show, authors of the brand new book, Kids Don't Need School, Jonathan and Adriana Prescott. Welcome here to The Brian Nichols Show. How you guys doing?
Good. Thank you for having us.
Yes,
great to have you on. Yes, thank you for joining us. And by the way, sneak behind the curtain, you guys are joining us bright and early. It's 8:30 a.m. over in the great state of Washington as we're recording here today. So thanks for waking up bright and early to join the show. But obviously, we're talking about a very important topic, a very passionate project for you guys. So jump ball, who wants to kick things off? Talk to us about homeschooling. Do your kids need school? This entire topic of kids education It's really rose up over the past 4 years, especially during COVID. Now more parents are having this conversation. So jump ball, who wants to, I guess, dig into this? Why is this a topic you guys have really embraced and started writing books about and building some solutions for?
Well, we're long time homeschoolers, and our daughter now is 14 and in college.
Yeah, she's homeschooled all
Wait,
her
14
life.
and in college?
Yes.
Okay, now we got to hear more about that.
Some of the amazing things she's done is she did middle school, which is comprises of 3 years worth of information and whatnot. We did it in she did it actually in 7 and 8 months, the whole middle school.
Wow.
Knowledge and skill sets and everything. And basically at 14, she did, she was ready for college. So she basically skipped high school and went straight to college. And in 4 years, she'll get a bachelor's degree in business. And by the time she graduates, she'll have not only her bachelor's, but she would have met all her high school requirements. So it's basically about learning, and every kid learns differently. And some kids can go past it very quickly. So this idea of that school or learning is how we learn it in public school is not at all.
What we found, since we're both engineers, I've got 30 years, she's got 20 years. What we've learned is how to break down systems and understand them and explain them in simple terms. And that's what we did in our book, Kids Don't Need School. Okay, and available on Amazon.
Yep, and we present a radical new homeschool plan that basically allows you to teach anything, promote independent learning, and prepare children for an uncertain future, because we don't know what that future will be. It's always changing. And so with the school system, they're not preparing children for a changing future.
And logistically, the public school system and even private school waste a lot of time in just managing people.
Yeah.
So homeschooling is very unique because you focus one-on-one with the child, and learning happens immediately. And so and then of course there's an aspect that we go into the book about agency and about motivation and
independent learning.
And so by the time the kids are 13, 14, they should be self-learning. You don't have to sit there and teach them, these things. You become a guide, a mentor.
Pretty much. You have to. Okay, so as homeschooling, education is not a separate thing. As we're raising children, we're teaching them life skills. And some of those life skills touch on some academics, but not in the same way that the school system does them.
Right. So our basic philosophy is this plan is for improving the parent-child relationship, so that
because without that parent and child relationship being good, the kids are not going to want to learn from the parents. And that's some of the conflicts that we see in the homeschooling communities, is parents saying, well, I can't get my kid to learn this or to be able to do this curriculum, because what's happening, some of the homeschool laws have very restrictive requirements where they have to tell parents you have to cover these subjects, and some states even go further on how to cover those subjects. But the pressure is there, and parents don't realize that you have to think about learning entirely different. You can still cover these things in a more natural way that is applicable to life, not just.
So let me jump in here first, because this all sounds great, right? And I'm on board, but then I hear the objections. I'm a sales guy, and I hear the objections ringing in the audience in the background. They're saying, but Brian, and then name the objections. So let's cover some of these objections, because at this show, we're not just talking about the solutions, but how do we effectively sell these solutions to people, right? So one of the main objections I'm sure you guys hear day in and day out is, well, first of all, Jonathan and Adriana, I'm not a teacher, number one. And number two, I don't know if you know this or not, I got a job. I'm busy. I don't have time to teach my kids on top of trying to be a full-time employee, or trying to be a full-time head of household, or trying to do my side hustle, or trying to go to the gym and maintain my personal health on top of trying to teach my kid too. Isn't that why I pay property taxes? Prescotts, tell me more.
Well, I mean, think about it. When we pay the property taxes, what product are we getting? I mean, we have kids all over the country who are not proficient, and they graduate not even proficient in reading or math or anything else like that. So what are you paying for?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
Not only that, what is the success rate for these kids? You know, what kind of life are they getting as adults in the end?
Are they teaching them how to be entrepreneurs or employees?
But let's answer the first question on qualifications, right? Because that's the number one thing that parents, I'm not qualified to teach, because apparently they think that you need a teacher certification to teach. Well, you don't. The thing is, we've been teachers ever since our children were born, came to this world. And the thing is, we've taught them many things. We taught them how to, eat solids, how to go to the bathroom, how to dress themselves, and all these things. So we've already been teaching them all these things. And all of a sudden we are passing this rest of the responsibilities over to institutions, babysitters, basically, and think that we can't continue. And the matter of fact is, we know what knowledge needs to be learned. We know what serves us well in life. And so those are the things we have to continue to teach our children and continue being their teachers. But better than that, they need our mentorship and guidance, because you don't want the just teaching relationship, like we're just transferring this information so you can, keep it. But no, it's not that. It's we're guiding them through life, because learning is part of life. It's not something you just acquired in the set of, time boundaries. And that's the thing about time. You don't need 8 hours.
Yes. I was just about to say that. You don't need 8 hours to teach your kids.
Okay.
That's
by the way,
school.
I just want to say that has been consistently one of the biggest objections I get is like, when else am I supposed to add this to my day? I already have like 12 hours, it seems, booked out. When can I add another 8 hours to teach a kid? It's not 8 hours. Tell us more about that. Yeah.
Okay. So the misperception of
Yes.
homeschooling, they think that they have to do public school at home. And that's the biggest mistake. And so a lot of the stuff in their book tells you not to do that. Instead, do these other things, because that actually is what homeschooling is about. And so they think that they have to cover the restrictions and the 8 hours and the boring lessons. Right. And the reality is, if you go back and look at the public school system, they have to spend 8 hours, because a lot of that time is spent managing 30 kids in the classroom, but basically it's management of a whole school of students and the logistics, like you explained. Right. So the learning really it's very small amount of time that learning is really happening in the schools. And so now that you have them in the homeschool environment, it's almost like having a private tutor, but even better than that is one-on-one instruction was obviously more efficient. And that's why you don't need that 8 hours. But not only that, but whatever information that supposedly gets covered in a year gets covered in a much shorter period of time. And that depends on the child, obviously, because they have different learning abilities. And so you're teaching them that in a way that better serves that child, whatever that pace is.
But don't they still have to take these state tests? I mean, if I had trouble, right here, we'll make it real. If I had trouble taking the state tests and I was going to school for 8 hours a day, how can my kid take these state tests if they're only going for an hour or 2 or 3 a day and putting in the same effort? Or are they not?
Because we don't teach to a grade. We teach to mastery. Okay. When your children master something, you don't have to do 16 more work pages
or worksheets or projects, because they mastered it quickly.
They already know it. So if you continue giving out these worksheets after worksheets, you're going to kill the motivation.
And you're going to discourage them from learning, because what you're teaching them or conditioning them is to think that learning is boring and not fun. And I don't want to do it.
And by the way, how much of that model of we give the kid a topic that we're gonna focus on, right? Let's just say addition, right? Basic addition, and the kid gets it, but then they have to drill this into their head for a week, 2 weeks, a month. Is that because that is the way that the bureaucracies, all the experts have said it has to be taught? Or is it literally as basic as, hey, you have 20, 30, 50 kids in a classroom, Billy might learn it day one, but Susie over there, she might need more time. So we have to take all these kids into consideration and understand that they all have different levels of how fast they learn. So we're just going to set an arbitrary time frame that hopefully Billy and Susie and Johnny and Timmy, they all can start to pick up on this stuff. So by the time of that, end of the month, we can move forward to the next topic, and everybody should be on board. Is it one of those two, or is it something else?
That tracks. Okay. The thing is if you want to teach like simple math, right, and you don't want it to be boring, have a family game night, not related to your homeschool, right, and play Yahtzee. And so that itself, you're going to go through addition and counting and everything else like this, and pattern recognition. That is a fantastic element to teaching a skill, because let's not call them subjects, let's call them skills. And if you take terminology from the gaming community, you talk about leveling up, like, so we level up our skills. And in fact, we even replace the word chores with skills. And we talk about leveling up our skills.
Yes, the other thing I want to talk about mathematics is they present it too abstractly to young children. And so when you present an abstract of math, in other words, a textbook, and you have numbers written, it's not meaningful, and that's why kids don't understand it. So the best way to teach math is concretely with hands-on materials, because math needs to be touched. They need to understand the concept, because guess what? We use math for different things, for engineering, for working, woodworking and stuff like this. And so you have to really show them that math is a tool. This is how we use math. And then advanced math is for those particular students that are interested in learning math for a different application, for predicting the future or algorithms and things like that. So, but the aspect is you have to let children manipulate things so that they understand math, because one of the ways that our daughter learned fractions really well is through baking, because baking has measurements, a cup, a quarter cup, but she took it several levels because she'd half a recipe or made a third of the recipe. And so that's how, with those hands-on experiences, they start to understand and make sense of what these computations are. And then when they're ready for the transition from concrete to abstract, the numbers written on the paper, now they know where that's coming from.
So the being applicable, right, to real life situations. And by the way, like, I'm just hearing my own math story, because I hated math. I freaking hated it. I grew up in high school, and I was like, why am I taking trig? I like politics. Like, why am I doing this? And then when I was in college, I took a statistics class, and I was in love. I thought it was the coolest thing, like little pea hat. I was like, this is the coolest thing. I can use this to actually apply to real life. And I saw it versus now, like a peek behind the curtain. I had a buddy of mine who he like super nerd, right? Like he actually has multiple degrees in math, loved like trig, loved calculus. And we went into statistics. He was good at it, but he hated it. He's like, this is boring. I don't want to do this. And it was just really interesting to see how math nerd loved the hard, complex stuff, but didn't like statistics because it bored him. Whereas me, I didn't like the super nerdy trig and calculus stuff, but I loved the statistics because for me, it was tangible. It was real life. It made sense. I love reading polls. I love looking at, sample sizes. I love trying to understand, is this a good poll or is not a good poll? How do they poll this? Like all these little things for me that was like, this is applicable and it's relevant. It matters. And how much of that, like when you look at the gamification, right? Gamification, it reaffirms the mattering because it's no longer the abstract, as you said, Adriana. It's no longer numbers representing something. Now it's the numbers mean something, but also you see when they come together that it yields something else, right? It might build something new. It might, lead you to the next step of the puzzle or the challenge, but you see that it's getting you somewhere and that there is a reason behind it versus just here's this book, read this book now, and then tell me everything you learned in this book. You're like, why? I don't care about this book. I don't care about, Romeo and Juliet. There has to be the why behind it. And if that's missing, then kids are just going to be like, I don't care.
And you're skirting around exactly one of the key features in our book talking about motivation.
Yes.
It's answering the question for the child, what's in it for me?
Exactly.
Yep.
If you can answer the what's in it for me question, you understand motivation. And
I don't have the book here, by the way. I'm just going to say I don't have the book here. That is one of the basic sales books I make all my sales teams learn, is a book called What's in It for Me. So the idea
I'm not familiar with the book.
Wow.
the idea of teaching sales and with the kids right here, like, oh my God, this is literally the exact same thing. So I just want to make sure people see this, right? What we're talking about in selling ideas in terms of selling this to a kid, exact same pain points. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
But it's fun that we are like-minded, because these are good ideas that we didn't know about it, that we were talking. Yeah, you didn't know about it in our book. We didn't know about it with you in your book, but we realized that they're really good ideas because we've analyzed it enough, and it's fantastic.
Right. And so here's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
If the child says, why do we need to learn all this stuff? And if you don't have the what's in it for me answer, where it explains it to the point where they are satisfied with the answer, then you're not ready to teach it. And so what one of the examples is our daughter said, why do we need to learn this math?
Graphing. It was
graphing.
Yeah.
And I'm going, so you can predict the future? And she goes, what? So I gave her something that said, here's a teaser. And then I explained about algorithms and about predictive models and stuff like this. And so that little, I knew that she was really knowledgeable in mythology. So the idea of predicting the future and the oracles and stuff, that really I was able to hone in on that interest.
Yes.
So to answer the question, what's in it for me? And to explain to her the importance of this particular subject. And you can do it with every single subject. You don't need to be an expert in a subject to teach it. Our daughter is learning Japanese. I don't speak Japanese. Yeah. She doesn't speak Japanese, but our daughter is learning it. She's learning reading and writing and stuff. And that's actually one of her first classes in college was the Japanese class. So the thing is, children have their own brains and their own motivation. And you don't have to be an expert in calculus to teach calculus. You just have to know certain particular things.
And in addition, you don't have to be on top of them, which brings us to micromanagers.
Oh, yes.
So you don't want to micromanage your kids about, you got to learn all these things. And I'm going to be on top of you to make sure you cover all these things.
And that's one of the things that's a holdover from the Prussian model of public education is the fact that they are by the bell.
Yep.
We are going to do this here. We're going to do this here. And what happens is that it just kills motivation. Some kids, they may excel in that, but they're in the position of, oh, the rules are the rules. We just have to follow them. But it's not about creativity. It's about compliance. And that's what the school system in its base philosophy talks about. It's compliance. And a lot of times it's stress compliance.
Yep.
So I'm hearing this and it is just funny, right? Because I teach sales, and I coach teams, and I have to help reframe the way that managers have consistently been teaching sales for 20, 30 years, right? And I think back to, I had a great sales manager at one of my old companies, and he was very much of this old 80s and 90s mentality of sales where you pound the pavement, you knock on doors, you smile and dial. That's great, but that's not how everybody works. And that's not how sales, frankly, is done nowadays. And being able to work with a manager like him and more or less have to reprogram him to understand not just that some of those old ways of doing things don't really work today, but also the fact that if you're trying to teach your sales guys how to do things in a different way. You have to yourself be willing to do things in a different way. And I say that because one of the biggest, I guess, challenges that we face, and maybe one of the biggest objections I hear, is that it's not so much getting the kids on board with this, it's getting the parents on board with this, right?
Yes.
Because the kids, they seem like they would jump in. I mean, kids are just inherently, by their nature, little learning machines. Like, that's all they're doing from the ages of like 0 to 18. They're like a sponge. But the parents have this preconceived notion of, this is how kids learn because this is how I was taught.
Yes.
And this is how it's supposed to be done. So how much of your challenge is actually getting parents to reframe their approach versus actually just selling the value of, this works, homeschooling works, your kids will see the value, but it starts with you, the parent, actually bringing this to the table?
Right.
And that's why we wrote the book, because that's what it precisely does. It's not only it does not only tell you why homeschooling is such a great idea, it tells you how to do it properly.
And not only that, we also go into what homeschooling will give society.
Yes.
And what type of future we can expect when we start doing mass homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. If you start homeschooling from the beginning, that gives you 16,000 more hours with your children. And what kind of parental bond do you think that would grow from that? And not only that, but you're talking about not just the 16,000 hours, but you're talking about I'm sorry, I'm getting what was the point I was going to make?
I don't know. Let me jump in real quick.
Yeah.
No, jump in.
It happens because engineers, we have too many thoughts going on, and so like we go.
I always just thought that was me being
direction.
me and confused all the time. But yeah, sure, engineers do it too. Yeah.
I guess maybe I should reframe that. Intelligent people think about many things in various ways.
Yes.
But the thing about homeschooling, what it represents is freedom. And the biggest complaint about the intellect is that the freedom of free thinkers, basically. You're not going to get that in any institution, even if they were to change their way and create some kind of program where there's more creativity. It just doesn't work, because to be a free thinker, you have to be free of everything. Free of the infrastructure. You have to be allowed to contemplate and experiment and discover in your own terms. And in other ways, you're giving each child their own right to be a free thinker when you're homeschooling them. That's the best way to do that. You're not going to achieve that in another place.
No, because you go through multiple choice questions, in tests in public school. And it's like, wait a minute, there is another answer to this. And there's a different perspective I can think about. But no, and especially if it's like online school, you're just going to get the answer wrong.
Yeah.
There's no like negotiation with multiple choice. There's no creative thinking. There's not even critical thinking. And in fact, public school says, oh, we teach critical thinking. No, you don't. No, it's compliance thinking.
And then I'll touch base, not just about the freedom, but about building families, because the problem with dropping off your kids and something else for learning, whatever, it's time spent away from parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time spent away from bonding and family, because what happens if you put them with other kids, they're going to be bonding. In other words, attaching themselves to other kids, and they're going to be influenced by whatever they're into. That's their structure. And so we don't want that structure to exist anymore. We want the parent bonding, the strengthening of that family bond, and that in turn turns into stronger unified communities. That's what we want.
And family legacies and passing on your values and things.
Yes.
And I just, before we end, there's another common argument against homeschooling, and that's socialization.
I was just going to bring that up. I'm so glad you did. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
But they won't be good social communicators. They won't be able to make friends.
In psychology, there's two types of socialization. There's primary socialization and secondary socialization. Primary socialization is about socializing to the families, talking about virtues and morals and values and things like that, and about how to conduct ourselves, as a virtuous person. Secondary socialization is socialization to a system. Think about it like your company. This is the way we do things. This is why you go through company training. And so you take that model and you imagine that as school. This is the way we do things at school. And that's the socialization that they talk about. Now, most people confuse socialization with socializing. That's not the same thing. Socialization in public school is about conditioning you to a particular system, and training you to accept that system. And so that secondary socialization has nothing to do with whether something is right or wrong. It's a right or wrong to their system, but it's not talking about morals and ethics and anything else like that. It's just to a system.
Now, if we talk about socializing, the homeschooling platform is a lot better at teaching kids how to socialize, because you're taking them with you everywhere you go, grocery store, bank, whatever, and they're there hearing you socialize with others. You're the template, basically, and you're the adult with experience in socializing. And so that's how they learn how to socialize, with the best teachers and experiences. Right. It's not something...
You don't learn how to conduct yourselves in a social setting with other people who don't know how to conduct themselves with a social setting, And they're not allowed
to either at school, because you have to sit down and be quiet and pay attention, right?
Exactly. And my math teacher in grade school says, we're not here to socialize.
Yep, it's true. Well, and really quick, I just want to highlight, you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, critical thinking skills. This will be my final thoughts, and it's a little bit of a story. So right now, I am working with a group of alumni from my private institution of higher education back when I was a young lad. And we wrote a very strongly worded letter, basically highlighting two main points over the past few years. Number one, the college's complete just failure when it came to their response for COVID-19 and forcing students to get vaccinated in order to just physically step on campus. Completely dystopian, completely ignores the ideas of bodily autonomy, so on and so forth. The second part we talked about was the just creeping increase of DEI on the college campus. And this is just represents across the board what we've seen happen. Now, my college, right, I'm going to give some credit where credit's due. Back when I went to college there, the college president, who had been there for 25 years at that point, he was a true educator. He wanted to see people think critically, understand the why behind why you believe things. And the way that he framed the college specifically for incoming freshmen was built to be in such a manner. So he actually required all incoming freshmen, regardless of major, to take freshman writing classes. And in those freshman writing classes, one of the main overarching themes was critical thinking and critical writing skills. Now, fast forward to today, with this very strongly worded letter that I helped pen to send over to the VP of Institutional Advancement and Alumni Relationships at my college. I sent that back in April, and yesterday I received a response. And oh, what a response it was. It was very interesting to read this response, because the response from that VP, we made a very well laid out, strong, not just argument, but morally correct position in our original concerns. Basically going back to and just regurgitating what they have been told. Here's why DEI is good. And here's why the COVID vaccines and mandates were good. And I sent a response in a critical thinking manner, not only just very delicate, not even delicately, just asking very common sense questions. The ideas about meritocracy versus affirmative actions bias, looking at the ideas of, forced compliance versus medical and bodily autonomy. And it was a very eye-opening moment for me to see I'm not anybody special. I'm a sales executive and leader in a technology industry. That's my job. I do a political show for fun because I like talking about this stuff with really cool people like you guys. But then to see the response from someone who, they're a VP, they know all these things, they're wise, right? And they have in their and they have in their email signature like, I am a first generation, and I just go a first generation what? Like we're playing this game. I understand it. Okay. But to see that there was such a lack of thought in the response, and it was entirely based on accepted platitudes that were force-fed by name the government bureaucracy or the groupthink mentality that completely removes critical thinking skills. So I tell that story to help paint the picture that this isn't just something that's happening in the traditional schooling structure that we're so used to, K through 12, but this is also very much alive and well in our higher education centers, if I can even call it that. And it's being perpetuated by the people who think that they have some moral or principled high ground because of the title they have next to their name or the institution of higher education they attended. It's a bunch of farce. It's a bunch of nonsense. You as a parent can do a way better job teaching not just your kids the basics, but I can almost guarantee you can do a better job of teaching your kids things that are applicable for real life success way more than a college of higher education. So that's my final thoughts. I know I went off there, but Jonathan and Adriana, what do you have for us on your end? And with that, obviously, we want people to buy this book and support the amazing work you guys are doing there. So a call to action would be appreciated as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So get our book. It's a great primer. You get a good background, and it'll give you courage to do homeschooling, and you'll realize that anyone can actually do it.
Right. And just the final thought for me on the critical thinking, it's really going to bake your brain when you realize that there's a difference between critical thinking and analytical thinking. That's somebody's, whoever in your audience, go look that up and see the subtle differences that exist.
Yes, and we are Homeschool Life. That's our company, and we can be reached at homeschoollife.us, and we will have courses for parents soon this year.
Yes.
And funny, by the way, it's funny you say that, because one of the questions I neglected to ask was, well, where do we start? Here you go. You're going to have courses. So instead of parents being like, I don't know how to build a curriculum, I guess we have some help.
Yes, and in the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook and on X.
Right. And so on X, I keep wanting to call it Twitter.
Yes.
It's our Twitter X.
Yes.
And but it's Homeschool _LLC. You can find us there.
And
fantastic.
And the Facebook is the Facebook Kids Don't Need School, all one word.
Perfect. And by the way, just so everybody in the audience isn't sitting there, frantically scratching down those names or steering off the road, trying to get their phones out to capture that. No, we're going to have all those links in the show notes. So it's going to be super easy to find, including your website. So folks, if you got some value from today's episode, which I know you did, please go ahead and yes, give it a share when you do tag yours truly on Instagram, x.com, yes, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find me at B Nichols Liberty. We'll make sure, again, we include those links for both Jonathan and Adriana in the show notes, as well as for Homeschool Life LLC, excuse me. And then we'll also include the links for Kids Don't Need School in the show notes as well. Now, for the podcast / video version of the show, when you're sharing the show, please, make sure that you tag your friends, share. That's how we actually reach more people. We could do marketing ad buys. We could do, sponsorship ad buys. Just literally you as a member of the audience sharing the show, telling your friends to check out the show. That is the number one way that we can reach more people. So I know you guys are sharing the show, by the way, so thank you for that. But when you share the show, yes, you can share the video version of the show. We got YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. We're uploading the video versions of the show in their entirety over there. And for the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, literally wherever it is you consume your content, your podcast content, just hit that download all unplayed episodes. And here's the reason. Recently, YouTube has been a little bit of a pain in my ass, and they've been giving me some warnings about violent content, harmful content, all because over the past 5 years of the COVID insanity. So we made a very tough decision here at the show, and we said, fine, we're going to nuke like probably 50, 60 videos that were on YouTube because we want to still have a presence on YouTube, but I knew for a fact that our days are numbered there. So what we did was we removed some of those videos. Those episodes, though, are still available in their entirety over on the main website, briannicholsshow.com, as well as in the podcast form. So if you want to check out all 850 episodes in their entirety, all topics discussed, no holds barred, go to the podcast version, all 100, or from episode 1 to episode 850. You're going to have some awesome conversations ranging from what's happened over the past 5 years. We talk about homeschooling. We talk about relationships. We talk about sex, drugs, rock and roll, all that fun stuff. Not so much rock and roll, but we should talk more about rock and roll. I like that topic. Other than that, yes, everything available over at the homepage, briannicholsshow.com. One last plug. I do have to do this really quick, guys. And that is to just a super thank you to the amazing folks who support us, and that is our sponsors. So cardiomiracle.com, they're phenomenal. Please go ahead, give them some love. We have our awesome new sponsors. We have our good buddy Dan Berman and his Liquid Freedom Energy Tea with literally 7 ingredients on here. 7 ingredients. You go to a Monster or a Red Bull energy drink, check the ingredients out there. You're going to be spending about 3 hours reading through them all and trying to figure out how to pronounce them. So stop putting poison into your body. Get some Liquid Freedom Energy Tea. Link in the show notes. Use code TBNS for $5 off. We have our Liberty Emporium or Indie Emporium sponsor, their Michael Scott 2024 shirt. So all those amazing sponsors can be found over at our homepage, briannicholsshow.com. Support them because they're the folks who support us. Last thoughts, words of advice. Jonathan, Adriana, jump ball. Where do you guys want to wrap things up today as we say goodbye?
Homeschooling is your parent or child relationship is your superpower is the for homeschooling. Sorry. The parent-child relationship is your superpower.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. And prepare them for independent learning, because that's the way the future's going in this era. If they don't know how to learn on their own, they're not going to make it. So homeschooling is the key. Mm-hmm.
Here. All right. Jonathan and Adriana, thank you so much for joining us, folks. Again, if you got some value, go ahead and give it a share. But when you do, again, tag yours truly at B Nichols Liberty. Links for Jonathan and Adriana in the show notes. Otherwise, it's all we have for you. Brian and Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for our friends over at the Homeschool Life LLC. We'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.